I don't anticipate that the AGM should take much longer than 20 or 30 minutes, and then we'll get into the talk. So I don't think I've received any apologies in advance of the AGM, so we can skip over onto the approval of the previous minutes. Has everyone had sight of these? Regardless, we will take a couple of minutes just to query these, and then if anyone has any questions or things to raise about them, then we'll take that now. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Pete. Are there any points of amendment or contention with the minutes of the last meeting? And if not, could I get a proposer and seconder from the floor, please?
I'll propose that we accept the minutes.
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Very much both. As far as I can see, there are no matters arising from the minutes, so we'll move on to the chair's report. So we'll keep this brief. We've got a fantastic speaker lined up, so I don't want to keep you all waiting. I think it's been a pretty good year for the BCS Birmingham branch on the whole, with partial return to in-person events, as well as some online, such as the one in today's talk. I want to highlight a number of key successes. So that includes JAG's Early Career Series, which will be returning, I promised, our Pataphysics and Computing talk, the Tech She Can event that we ran a few weeks ago, and also working with BCS HQ to help bring the BCS's bursary program to Birmingham as a kind of pilot project. I further want to highlight our continued engagement with the local tech community, in particular that Hack the Midlands 7, which is an event we've been supporting since it started, since its inception in 2016, is coming back next weekend. There are still tickets available. If you're interested in getting involved, it's running at the studio in town. But also our continued engagement with the local student communities, both through our annual student awards and also our continued collaboration with the Computer Science Society at the University of Birmingham. I'd like to just conclude by noting that the branch going forwards intends to continue putting on events as usual, providing support to the local tech community and working to engage a diverse range of attendees in our events. And unless there are any questions for me, I'd like to hand over to Peter, who will be giving the Treasurer's report.
Yes.
Actually, wait, I need someone to propose and second the chair's report.
I'll propose, Tom.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Now over to you.
Right, let me find my oh, I've lost it. Oh, come on. It was here a minute ago. Right. Okay, well, there's a version of this that was online. I don't know whether Pete's going to scroll it through while I talk, but anyway, I'll speak to it. For the last financial year, which ended in August this year, we submitted a budget bid totalling £6,920, which included £600 for student prizes and membership, plus £3,200 for sponsorship expenses. We plan to hold 8 branch meetings during the year, and the average bid we put in per meeting was £365. The allocation we received in August 2021 totaled £5,654, with the reduction being across all cost codes except the student prizes and sponsorship expenses. The average allocation for our 8 planned meetings was £215. In practice, because of the ongoing effects of the COVID pandemic, we only held online meetings during this financial year. So our major expenditure was on sponsorship for Hack the Midlands 2021, which has already been mentioned by Tom. And in lieu of paying speakers' expenses for our October 2021 presentation on the IT support for the 2022 Commonwealth Games, which were being held in Birmingham in July this year, we made a donation of £100 to the charity which is providing a legacy for Birmingham for the Games. I am not quite sure how it has happened, but only one of our 3 student prizes was actually claimed during the year, and only 2 were claimed the previous year. So I hope we can improve matters for the current year. So we were seriously underspent, spending only £1,780, which was less than a third of our allocation up until August this year. For the current financial year, September 2022 to August 2023, we submitted a budget bid of £6,554, which again included £600 for student prizes and membership, plus £2,500 for sponsorship expenses. We again plan to hold 8 branch meetings during the year, and our average bid per meeting was £403. When we received our allocation near the end of August this year, there had been systematic reductions of the allocation for meeting costs, including the travelling expenses. This resulted in an average allocation for branch meetings of £155, which was less than 40% of our original bid, the biggest reduction being in the allocation for catering, down by 72%. In a change from previous years, the funding for student prizes is now handled centrally, so they will not appear in our branch accounts. The same is true for sponsorship payments, such as we've made in the past to Professional Institute Network West Midlands and the ongoing sponsorship of Hack the Midlands. These expenditures have to be approved by the Community Board Finance Committee, and again will not appear in the branch accounts. So far in the current financial year, our meetings expenditure has been £109 for our October meeting, Tech She Can, which again was mentioned by Tom. Our application for £3,500 for gold sponsorship of Hack the Midlands 2022, which is, he said, is being held very shortly and being held as a physical event for the first time in 3 years, has been approved by the Community Board Finance Committee. I'm very pleased to report. So that's all I have to say. Does anyone have any questions? No. Well,
Fantastic. In which case, do we have a proposer and seconder for the Treasurer's report, please?
Happy to propose.
Happy to second.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we now move on to the appointment of committee. I've split this into a couple of different sections. So we've got the committee who are retiring under the 3-year rule and then looking to stand again. Those who were co-opted for the year's term and now are being proposed for a 3-year term, and then anyone who wants to stand from the floor. So I'll take them in that order. So the first retiring under a 3-year rule is me. Do I have any proposers and seconders for my re-election to the committee?
I'll propose.
And I'll happily second.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections from the floor? So if I take objections, maybe not. Fantastic. Thank you very much. The next is Terry. I'm happy to propose Terry.
Peter second.
Thank you very much, Pete. The third standing, retiring under 3-year rule is Jake Foster. Do I have a proposer for Jake?
Yeah, I'll propose.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Peter. Finally, we have Pete Gale.
I'll propose.
I'll second that. For those who are co-opted for a year's term, and now we propose for a 3-year term, we have Norman King. Do you have any proposers and seconders? I'm happy.
Yeah, I'll propose. Yep.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. And then we have Mark, who I am happy to propose.
To second.
Finally, Jag Sohal.
I'll propose.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. And do we have anyone who wants to stand from the floor for election to the committee? Fantastic. In which case we move on to item 7, which is the election of officers. So the committee would like to put forward myself and Kieran, I will respond to your question in a minute. If you could raise it, we'll raise it in AOB. Yeah. So the committee would like to put forward myself and Terry for another term as co-chairs of the branch. Do we have any proposers for each of us, please?
I'll propose for both.
I'll second for both.
Fantastic. Is there anyone from the floor who wishes to stand for the position of chair? Sorry, I'm also minuting at the same time, which is a little more difficult than it seems. Fantastic. In which case, myself and Terry will continue as co-chairs of the Birmingham branch. The committee would like to put forward Peter Crouch to continue his role as treasurer, which I am happy to propose.
Happy to
Happy
second.
Put it down as Pete, but it was kind of both of you. Does anyone want to stand from the floor for the position of treasurer? Fantastic. In which case, Peter, you are still treasurer.
Wow.
Moving on to any other business, we've got a question in the chat from Kieran. So we mentioned engaging students a number of times. Do we have a route for getting placements into industry as a potentially appealing approach? I don't know if we have anything specifically. Certainly there are things in the local tech community, and some universities run things along the lines of kind of summer placements and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's more, is it something we can do? You know, so I work for the public sector, so but I know across the whole of the Birmingham and Solihull public sector, that's all the acute trusts, the hospitals, the local authorities, etc. There's tons of opportunities, things where people get real world experience, see real world problems from a number of tech perspectives, take your pick. Just feels like, is that something you could potentially match up, you know, really get people into what tech can do, how it can be applied, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so what I can do is I can put you in touch with Jake, who currently heads up our kind of student engagement, but also with Jacob, who's both a committee member and also the current president of the Computer Science Society at Birmingham. So
Cool.
Yeah, happy to do that. I'll tell you what, I'll shoot you my email quickly. And yeah, let's definitely do something. And yes, just to draw everyone's attention to it, Pete has just highlighted a discount code to join the BCS if you are not already a member. So finally, if there's no other business, I'd like to propose that we will hold the next AGM on the 10th of October 2023. It's a Tuesday. Are there any objections or otherwise to that? Fantastic. In which case, Mark, over to you to introduce our speaker for the evening. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Very briefly, going to introduce Simon. I work with him at Oasis. We've worked together quite heavily on the Oasis Horizons project. Simon has 14 years, according to LinkedIn last week, working within education. Prior to that, he has worked in the real world of dirty money grabbing shareholders. So he's got a unique sort of coverage of all aspects, and he is probably the technical architect, I would say, for the Horizons project. So without further ado, he has been made a co-host and he should be able to share his screen, and I'll happily hand over to him.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you everybody for having me this evening. I'm just going to try and work out how to use Zoom and share my screen, which hopefully you can all now see.
Yeah.
Good. So, yes, as Mark says, I've worked for Oasis now for about 14 years. Oasis are one of the largest multi-academy trusts in the country. We have 52 academies of a mix of secondary, primary and all through. And we serve about 31,000 students all across the country. And what makes Oasis really unique in what we do that differs from other rivals of ours, really, and I don't really want to use the term rivals, but other multi-academy trusts, is we work in the most challenged of communities. You won't find an Oasis Academy on Park Lane in London or Hyde Park Corner or Chelsea. You will find our academies in cities like Bristol, Birmingham, Isle of Sheppey, Croydon, and all of these big major cities in the most deprived areas of those cities. And we work with families and communities that really don't know how to fund, certainly given the current cost of living crisis, but even before this crisis, they really didn't know how they were going to fund their next meal or pay for their next fuel bill, as I said, even before this crisis. And one day, the IT director phoned me up and he said, Simon, he said, had an idea, he said, how would you like to lead on a one-to-one device program for Oasis? And I went, how hard can that be? The answer is it's actually really very hard. I've worked on many different projects in my career with Oasis. I've worked on new buildings, and we've kit out brand new buildings with the latest kind of technology, systems and services for students to use when they move in. I've worked on programs to change our management information systems across 52 academies to try and improve our data on the organisation and the data that we have on students. But this project, this Horizons project, is the only project I've ever worked on that has a direct impact on students. And even on the launch day, when I went on the very first academy I visited and saw the students taking the wrapper off an iPad box and their face just lit up, is not something that one sees every single day. We're dealing with the students that actually their only access to the internet as a family might be one mobile phone in the household, and now Oasis has given them an iPad. So for me, I'm really proud of the project. It is the largest one-to-one iPad rollout in England, and it is something that I am very proud of the team that I've worked with that's pulled this off to make this happen. But just to show you a little bit more, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to show you just a little video and hopefully you can hear the sound.
Did you know that every Oasis pupil, new or existing, will be part of the Oasis Horizons scheme? Let us tell you more.
At Oasis, we believe everyone should have the opportunity to do their very best and reach their potential.
no matter where we are or what your background is. Through Oasis Horizons, we will have access to many exciting learning resources that our teachers have created for us.
We can access this at school or at home on the palm of our hands.
So we can continue to enhance our knowledge no matter where we are. This is really exciting as we will be part of a community of learners all over the country.
Oasis has made sure that these are set up to be safe for all age ranges and are protected if lost.
There are loads of helpful apps available too, suggested to us by our teachers, which are really helpful with continuous learning.
All our lessons come to life.
Our teachers benefit from Oasis Horizons too. The technology allows them to do their marking much faster, giving them more time to do what they do best, helping us to learn.
So no matter which Oasis Academy you are part of,
We can broaden your horizons, preparing you for an exciting future full of opportunity.
So what is Horizons? So as you just saw, every new and current pupil and actually classroom-based staff are provided with an iPad for their duration of their time at Oasis. So everyone, no matter what your background in the areas that I spoke about earlier on, has an equal access to online learning. We think it enhances learning for everybody. So no matter what your starting point is on your education journey, no matter what your kind of progress is at the moment in maths or English, you all get access to the same technology to enhance that learning. The curriculum, we've got a fantastic team of lead practitioners. These are the very, very best teachers within our organisation that that might be siloed in one academy, but actually we've pulled them out of that academy to go around the country and develop a curriculum that all of our academies can use, with applications such as Shobi and GoFormative and library systems that are in the palm of students' hands, so that our entire organisation are on the same page. We delivered this entire project in about 18 months, and I'll come on to kind of figures in a bit, but it meant that all students could learn from home using Teams and using all of these applications that are being developed, all supported as well when you're inside the network by a thing called Apple Classroom, which is where teachers can open up an application on their teacher iPad and instantly open up a web page on 30 students' devices to save that time of, right, little Johnny, can you kind of open up Safari? Can you browse to this web page? Can you do this? Can you do that? Actually, the teacher can do it in about 5 seconds to obviously enhance that precious time they've got to teach. But it wasn't just about education, as I keep mentioning, and it is a really important point to keep labouring, is that we work in the most challenged and deprived areas of the country. You know, as I mentioned, some families have one mobile device to access the internet. But what we've done by giving their siblings and their sons and daughters and family members an iPad is that we've not only gave them access to learning from home, but we've also given them access to banking services, government websites, so they can go and file for help with benefits or whatever it may be that they need access to. But more importantly as well is it's bridging the digital divide. So obviously you have some students that have the latest technology that walk in and say, look at my brand new iPhone, what we're on now, 14, 15 now, isn't it? Look at my brand new phone, when actually a student didn't have a device or might have had a really, really old device of a different brand. This bridges that divide. Everybody has the same technology. Everybody has access to the same resources that we've provided. We had to formulate a digital strategy. So our vision, so the Oasis vision is a passion and commitment to include everyone. And we prioritise social inclusion in everything we do. We created a curated app store. So with an Apple managed Apple ID, students don't have access to the public Apple App Store. So we, using our MDM provider, which is Jamf, have created a curated app store, a self-service store, that we vet all the apps. We say, yes, these are fine for student use. And the students can then go into that curated store and then download and delete apps as they like. We've made these devices, we didn't want them to be dictated by us on what could happen to them. There are, of course, restrictions. There are, of course, filtering to make sure that the students can't get to inappropriate websites. But we made a really conscious decision that things like Netflix could be used when it was at home, or Spotify, or Facebook for our secondary school students. They can access Facebook at home, and all other types of social media. So we were not restrictive, and in fact we empowered parents to be able to help with our e-safety strategy and for them to monitor what the students were doing at home. We, as I've mentioned, Horizons allowed us to deliver personalised learning. So no matter what your starting point is on your learning journey, you have access to the same things and the same resources, no matter where you are in the country and no matter what your starting point is. We have, as I said, various different apps, like a library system that is direct in the palm of your hand, so that you can do e-reading wherever you like. But it was really important. We're not saying that this scheme replaces textbooks or workbooks or bits of paper in the students' hands. As much as I am completely paperless, we're not mandating that as a kind of policy. We did say, however, that as part of the funding scheme to fund this programme, that actually we were not going to allow printing inside our network from an iPad. So our printing costs as an organisation are eye-wateringly huge. And we said, actually, we're not going to allow you to print from an iPad, but you can still print from your laptop if you wanted to. So we ran a pilot. Now, the pilot, I really don't like the word pilot, really, because it makes us sound as if we were unsure about what we wanted to do. And we were really, really sure right from the off that we wanted to do one-to-one scheme. We were really, really sure that we wanted to use iPads to do that. The pilot really was to help us find the correct process and procedure in order to deliver this at scale and at speed. So, whilst we tested the deployment individually and in small numbers, I had piles of iPads on my desk at home where I was constantly trialing the rollout and to see what happened to the device individually. Actually, we weren't really aware, despite all the work that I'll talk about in a bit, of what would happen when we rolled this out to a school with 1,000 students in it. So the pilot really was to make sure that we had our supplier lined up, that the deliveries were going to arrive on time, that the devices were enrolled in the correct systems and services, that the accounts were ready to go. And once we were happy with the process and the procedure, we could then roll out much, much quicker. So we drew a kind of readiness for Horizons document. So we approached every academy and we said, look, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to do. And if we felt actually as a leadership team they weren't ready, then we would bump them and delay them a bit until the end in case they were, until they were. There are all sorts of things in the education world that can throw a spanner in the works, things like an Ofsted inspection or some assessment window or GCSE windows, etc., etc. So we had to juggle the rollout for these 52 academies and the 35,000 users that were in them. But we also had to make sure that students could actually, or users really, could sign in. We knew who had the device and filter them appropriately through our web filters. So what we really did, and if I'm honest, I don't think we did this really well at the time, but we are starting to do this now, is we didn't want to deploy and give an academy 1,000 iPads and say thank you very much for doing business with us, there you go. We really wanted to make sure that actually once they had this investment, that they were actually going to use them productively to support education, which is where this kind of this standardized curriculum comes into play. And as I said, we had these various different documents to kind of make sure that academies knew what they had to do and what they had to do with them. The thing is, so when we're doing something like this, it is a very, very different way of working from not only the users that are receiving these devices, but actually for us as an IT department. It was a fundamental change. It was a huge, huge change for some people in our organisation. Had never used an iPad. They never ever used an Apple device and were and didn't really know what to do with them. But what the main real selling point, or the main points that I really wanted to make our users aware of, was that actually you can pick up your laptop in the building and you can work on a Word document. You can then get on the train on the way home and open up your iPad and carry on with that Word document from your iPad that you were working on before you left the building. And then you can get home and you can open up your laptop again and you can pick up from where you left off with when you're working on the train. So it was about making people aware that it doesn't really matter what device you have, because our productivity suite is Office 365. It means you can use any device anywhere in the world and kind of mix and match and pick up documents at any point in time. We're really lucky. We have such a strong team of people, not just in IT, but in education as well. So we had the skill set actually to deliver this program, but we also used partners, so our suppliers, to deliver CPD and training to our teaching staff face to face to say, look, this is what you can do with your Office 365 services on your iPad, and this is what you can do with Apple Classroom, so on and so forth. So we started off with the basics, so the basic functionality of an iPad, how to navigate around, how to use it, install apps and self-service, delete them if you need to, update, so on and so forth. Then the basics of teaching and learning, how you can use this new tool to teach your class and your students. And that was, as I said, using things like Apple Classroom for that. And as I said, our productivity suite was Office 365. Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm in my conservatory and it's just started raining. So if you can, I'm hoping you can still hear.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So that was our teaching staff, but actually we had to really train our IT staff for this new way of working. We rolled out 1,800 Apple TVs across the estate. That teachers, instead of being stood at their teaching desk at the front of the class, that they can actually walk around the classroom now with an iPad in their hand and wirelessly present to the projector. Bear with me 1 second. Right, hopefully you can hear me a bit better now, hopefully. So that was Apple TV and AirPlay, and then we had to show our teams how to install apps and how to use different apps that were going to support education. We had new processes for onboarding devices, so this was all completely new. We had to have hundreds of devices turn up and show users how they actually onboard these. We had to make sure that that they were assigned to the right user group. So we have 2 sets of users, we have students and staff. We had to make sure that actually once they turned these on and they signed in, we knew exactly who had them in order for us to filter them correctly. We had new processes for managing lost, damaged and stolen devices. What happens when a student lost one or one was damaged? We had to have a whole new process for fixing them, and B, the finance around replacing them if they actually got lost, and who we were going to charge and how. New tools for supporting devices. We brought on a brand new MDM, so mobile device management system that, as I said, was going to support 35,000 iPads, 1,800 Apple TVs, about 350 Macs. We had to show the entire IT department how to use these tools effectively to manage this estate. If I'm honest, I don't think we got it quite right. I still don't think we've got it quite right. I still think there's a lot of work to do in how we support the estate, and I'll come on to that a bit shortly. But it's not something we got quite right straight from the off. We have new tools to support iPad and classroom management, as I said. We have had Apple Classroom, Jamf Pro, Apple School Manager, which is what controls all the devices in the account. These are all brand new to people that, as I said, haven't really used an iPad before, let alone the systems behind them to manage them. I think all of us are probably really aware that actually cybersecurity at the moment is front and center of anybody's agenda. And therefore, the more access people have, the more of the attack surface there is, the more of a footprint there is for a potential cyber attacker to compromise.
And this is a really fine balance between me saying, no, you're not having access to this, to yes, you can have a little bit, do what you need to do, versus trying to secure our systems to prevent a rogue attack. But actually, for somebody to do something that they didn't intend to do, that actually had disastrous consequences. So by that I mean, you know, we have wireless profiles that are deployed to thousands of devices in one go. And if somebody were to say change the naming convention or rename a word or put a full stop at the end, whatever it may be, then instantly we've disassociated those devices with our wireless network. And that is a really fundamental risk that I wasn't going to take. So, you know, for our 100 members of the IT team, they don't like not having access, they don't like not being able to tinker, but actually I need to secure the integrity of the program. So, you know, for those of you who are familiar with MDM, you don't get a cancel button, you don't get an are you sure. As soon as you make a change and hit OK, that's it. It's gone to all of those devices instantly. So that was a trade-off I had to make. How did we do it all? Well, we are really good friends with Apple. We've got a really good solutions expert at Apple who delivered a series, what we call a tech series, really. It was a series of sessions once a week on a different topic of something to do with Apple, really. It could have been their new version of iOS at the time. It could have been on Apple School Manager. It could have been on how to manage the estate. But they delivered a session every week. I and Mark Hundley, we delivered a kind of internal roundtable briefing every week. So again, we picked a subject and we repeated it and repeated it and repeated it every week, or for as long as it took, so that our support teams could really understand what we were trying to do and how we were going to achieve it. We had an internal learning and development zone that our students and our staff, both IT and teaching, can access to improve their skills. It's still there now. Any staff member can go on anytime they like if they want to learn how to use pages or numbers or how to use the device more effectively to support teaching and learning. They can do that at any point. We insisted that not only our teaching staff, but our IT support staff all took part in the Apple Teacher Programme and had the certificate to prove they'd actually done it, which runs through various different areas, from Swift sorts of things to pages to numbers, to how to use an iPad as well, and get the kind of certificates they've done that. I think it's fair to say my phone and my team's inbox was never as busy as what it was when we were deploying this program. But it was, that's what it took in order to make sure we knew how to support this thing. This post-it note it's something that has stuck with me actually ever since we started working with Jump. And it is the one thing that was in my mind actually when we deployed this program. It's not, no matter who you are, whether you are a student in year 1 or whether you're a student just about to leave sixth form, what I wanted to achieve was them to feel like these iPads were their own. Okay, so we purposely made a conscious decision. We were going to give these students the box still with the wrapper on, still with the film on the iPad when you open it up and take it out of the box. That you could literally peel off, and anybody that's an Apple fan will know that feeling. They will know what that feels like. But we wanted our students to experience that. And you know, I think historically we've always given students the staff devices that we've configured, that we've managed for them. We've handled it first, and we've gone, there you go, we built it for you. That is not something I wanted to do with Horizon. I really wanted them to open the box. I wanted them to turn on for the very first time, and that was it. And this post-it note really typifies what we were trying to achieve. So what happened is a user takes the iPad out of the box, they turn it on, they join it to the wireless network, they run through a couple of bits on the setup assistant, like where are you in the world and what language do you speak. Once they do that, they're prompted for credentials. They're prompted with a who are you, which our network is initiating that. It's through LDAP. The box will prompt and say, who are you, please log in. The student logs in. The systems will then say, brilliant, you're authenticated, you can now continue. The system will then manage the device. It will supervise it. It will give a certain restrictions. So for instance, nobody can remove the MDM profile. Nobody can remove anything to do with the wireless profiles, anything like that. It's all locked down. Users can't bypass the App Store. They can't get into the App Store. They can't install stuff that we don't let them install. But the most important thing is the system then, once they've logged in, knows who they are and associates the device to that user. They can do, whilst they can't change any system sorts of settings, as I said, they can't remove the MDM stuff, they can personalize the iPad. They can change the wallpaper. Even if you're a student, you can change the wallpaper. You can choose the applications you want from the App Store to make it look like their own, which was, as I keep saying, was really, really important. There were some obvious technical challenges. I think the biggest headache we had as we were going through, we did a lot of pre-work, which I'll come on to. But caching works by, as soon as one device goes out to the internet to ask for an application, was a real problem for us. It took us quite some time to get it right. But as you can see on this slide, this just typifies some of the data that in this was for a small primary, I might add, that in 7 days, just for that one small primary, we served over 740 gigs worth of data to that academy, or to the devices in that academy. So if caching wasn't right, if it wasn't working, you instantly saturate the WAN and cause untold problems across the estate. So this was really important. It is really, really painful, especially when you're doing this 52 times across our entire estate. But that data is phenomenal. 1.85 terabytes of data for one small primary in a month is quite significant. Mark Hundley would be very, very, very upset if I didn't mention scripting. He spent lots of time for me hidden in a dark room for considerable periods of time, kind of ruining the fact really that when I would phone him up and say, I've been thinking, or I've got an idea, and he would listen and he would say, yes, it's a good idea, and he would go off and script it for me to make sure that this would work really. And this is from everything to do with user provisioning into the MDM through to us managing the devices and putting them into lost mode when we lose contact with them, or whatever it may be. Mark has built some phenomenal scripts, and he's done some phenomenal work actually to support this program, that we couldn't have done it without this piece of work really. As I said before, provisioning, we had to know who had which device in order to safeguard them, in order to filter them both on-site and off-site. So when they're on-site, they go through on-premise web filters. Off-site, they go through a thing called Cisco Umbrella, so that we can always tell what they're doing. We can always report on what they're doing, and more importantly, safeguard them and prevent them from going on to things they shouldn't be getting onto. We did a lot of work on the network. So when we first looked at this as an idea, we surveyed every site. We looked at every core switch. We looked at every single access point, wireless coverage, wireless throughput. We did heat map tests, iPerf tests. We had to make sure that every single part of the building could cope with the increased demand of devices. Again, we didn't get it quite right. We did do quite a lot of mopping up after, because the kind of access points we were using might not have been man enough really to support increase. So we spent more money on changing some of the access points. We increased the WAN and MIA capacity across the group. So every single site had a WAN bandwidth increase. Our data centers had an increase as well on the egress at the data centers. And kind of security really, as I said, we had to make sure that the devices, I didn't want to hand out a pre-shared key to 35,000 users. We spent a lot of time researching how to wirelessly authenticate our devices automatically, which we've managed to achieve through kind of certificate-based and radius-based authentication. That all happens as soon as the students sign in. As I said, the wireless profile automatically deploys with a certificate that's populated by that user login, and that will then go through our network without use of pre-shared keys. We had a big problem. There's a bit of a flaw with Apple really, that if you forget your PIN code a number of times, that's fine, the MDM can unlock it. However, if you do it for a certain period, or a certain number of times actually, beyond that, the device becomes disabled, and then you have to physically DFU it or physically reset it, which, certainly with our younger students, that would become quite a problem. So that was some of the technical stuff we've had, and it has been a journey. And I just want to finish off really by, this has been a journey. It's been great fun. I would absolutely do it all again. But we're at the stage now where actually we're looking at data. We want to look at actually what benefit is this having on students' education, where are our devices, what are they doing? And Mark and I, we've spent a lot of time now actually trying to automate the way we manage this service. So if a device goes missing, rather than somebody hitting a button to put it into lost mode or to lock it down because we don't know where it is, we're automating the whole process now. So we'll automate if the device doesn't show up for a certain period of time, we'll flag it as not being seen. That then highlights our education colleagues that actually, if the student doesn't have that device, how are they being educated? So that we're starting to link up the technology now with our education team that can now look at the way that this is being used in the classroom. So, we're building a lot more data now on lost devices. These, the purple one with the highest peak, we've lost contact with those, we don't know where they are. Whoops. And we're building using Power BI now in a much more informative way to show us what's happening with the estate. Compliance, I expect that our devices are updated to the latest update as soon as possible, but as you can see with that pie chart on the right, that's not always possible. It's quite a battle to try and get this through all the time. So just finally, just in some numbers, I mentioned earlier on, we've got around about 300 Macs in the estate, over 350 iPhones, 1,800 Apple TVs, 38,500 iPads. And our App Store, this is growing every day, but we currently have about 1,350 applications that students can access and staff can access to support not just their education, but their personal lives as well. So that is the end of my rambling. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been informative. And I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any they'd like to ask.
Thank you, Simon. I know Amir did post a question. I don't know if Amir would like to unmute and ask themselves or if they would prefer me to. I'll take that pause as a cue. So the question was, assuming that there were separate profiles per academy created in Jamf, if so, were these profiles created by that particular academy's IT staff according to the academy's needs, or were there guidelines that they had to work within?
That's a really good question. No, so academy staff, or certainly IT staff, didn't have access to the kind of architectural stuff. So they didn't have access to create profiles and deploy things ad hoc. I was really clear right at the start that we wanted profiles to have a certain naming convention because everything's linked, right? So the way that the devices are onboarded into what's called a pre-stage, that they have to have a particular name to feed into a smart group that has a particular name that names the devices in a certain way that then all the profiles target accordingly. If somebody creates something that's out of that scope, then you've got a mess and you've got something that's not going to work quite right, which in turn kind of increases the number of tickets into our service desk. So the core service, I'm really guarded about. It upsets a lot of people, but I'm really guarded about it because it works. If other people manipulate it, then it's not going to work as well, I don't believe. But it wasn't about a particular academy's needs. We created the whole thing at a top-down level. So all the wireless profiles are the same. Yes, we could have done one profile for the whole group, but actually there's a risk in that if somebody did something quite wrong, we would break it for the entire group. So instead, we've got a wireless profile now for each academy to kind of mitigate anything going wrong. But everything else is done at a kind of top-down level.
Fantastic. Thank you, Simon. Hopefully that covers it for you, Amir. Happy to take questions from anyone else. If you'd like to ask a question, if you could use the reactions button, please, within Teams. There's an option to raise your hand, and then we'll operate on a first come, first served basis. Or if everyone's happy, we can.
See, Peter's asked a question.
He has, yes.
Do we find any conflict? So it's a really good question. Our productivity suite is Office 365, and that is the way we work. We do have a Google tenant, for example. We have an Apple tenant as well. So all of our users as part of this program have an Apple ID, and they can access iCloud services. We don't mandate the use of anything other really than Office 365. But actually, that said, we don't say you can't use Pages and you can't use Keynote. In fact, all of our primary colleagues that have built the primary curriculum, which I've got to say is absolutely fantastic. And you can walk around multiple different academies around the country and you can see the same lesson being taught on the same day. It's really, really impressive thing. And all of that was built in Keynote because they felt that actually the way Keynote works is much better than PowerPoint. The way that you can do certain animations and you can annotate on them is better for students to use. Apple have a thing called Apple Schoolwork that some people use. Again, we don't mandate it, we give them the option, but we don't say they can't, really, is how I would describe it. I think everybody knows, all staff know actually, that to send an email you use Outlook to send it. Everybody knows that if you're sharing a document with a number of people in the organization, that it's done through OneDrive and Word and the associated Office apps.
Fantastic, thank you, Simon.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah.
Amir, would you like to unmute if it's appropriate? Or I'm guessing as you typed it, I'll read that. Obviously, the question is another question. Did you face any opposition from senior management or SLT when it came to the proposal of this project? I ask because in the past, I've always felt I had to spend a lot of time selling these ideas.
Yeah, really good question. I think, and I totally relate to what you're saying. I think, as I said right at the top, I've spent a large number of my time at Oasis working on very different projects where you do get that resistance from academies, and they don't want to change and they're really stuck in their ways. Education, if you've not worked in it before, is a really, really strange environment for that. But historically, I think IT have always led the project. So, for instance, at the moment, I'm leading a project to move into Teams telephony. So I want to remove all desktop handsets from every single academy, and instead they have Teams telephony. So they can make a call through Teams to an external number, or if somebody phones an external number, it will ring on Teams. And we do get some resistance to that. People don't like that kind of change because that's IT leading that project. We're trying to save the organisation some money. We're trying to reduce the amount of kit we have to replace on the refresh programme, but we're leading that. I think the difference between the Horizons project is we pushed it, even though IT led it, we did the technical work to make it happen. We sold it as a kind of an education team led project. And that's the very first time, I think, in my history of Oasis, we actually did that. And because it was mandated from the education team, it was much, much easier to sell it to academies. It was much, much easier to push it through, to say, actually, you're not going to have a choice. This is going to happen, and we are going to better the outcomes for our students. So it's slightly different slant on it this time.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Amir. Can I offer any more questions to anyone else, if anything's occurred? I mean, I'm sure if anyone has anything that sort of wakes them up in the middle of the night and they desperately need an answer.
Don't phone me in the middle of the night, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to sell you Simon's phone number for a very small fee. But in all seriousness, if you do have queries, obviously Simon is contactable through myself, but I would sort of say probably via the Birmingham branch committee, we can make appropriate communications. Obviously, Simon has a proper day job, which is thinking up cunning plans to use my time. But most sort of educationally queries, and I guess you could probably apply this to business as well, because a lot of the considerations do apply. We can guide you. We wouldn't be able to do the work for you, but we could give you the gotchas and the lookouts probably. So if no one else has any further questions, I would like to raise your attention to something that's going to be very difficult for me to read. There is an event that has been published for Tuesday the 15th of November, which is a talk about neural controllers in music making using the Digital Syzygies project, I think. And if I've said that wrong, I'm sticking with my pronunciation. That came out via the BCS email yesterday, so Please check your emails, and if you're interested, do go and sign up. Other than that, I would like to thank you all for coming this evening. Especially thank you to Simon for making himself available. And I will see you back at work tomorrow. And for everyone else, I look forward to seeing you on our next meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.